All right, so we're starting. Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind. It's draft season. It is also getting close to the finals to the end of the finals, I guess, because, we're right in the middle of a series and we'll see what happens one way or the other. But we're here to talk about the draft, like I said. Coach is going to tell a story. Reese is gonna, and Mouth of the North is gonna introduce his man of the hour, and Beyond and I are gonna chime in with our thoughts. So, without a further ado, we're gonna be talking about Kel'el Ware, and there you go. Coach, take it away.
So probably last year's might have been around November, maybe early December. I get a message from Mouth, and he says, "I like this kid Ware," and I happened to be watching this game on television. Oregon was playing, and I saw this big kid Ware on the floor. I'm like, "Oh, he's got a nice little jumper, and he's long and fairly athletic." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's got NBA talent for sure." And I looked on some of the mock drafts at the time, and at the time he was mocked in the middle of the first round, late first round at the time. So this is when I first heard about Kel'el Ware was from our guest today, the Mouth of the North, and the stock is going up. But I'll let Mouth continue on for now.
Yeah. For some reason, and I can't remember why, but I was watching the Pac-12. I may have had some money on games. I'm not going to go there, but I was watching Oregon play.
During his Washington.
Yeah, there's something going on there because I wouldn't have been watching the Pac-12 otherwise. But I had a reason to watch the Pac-12, and I saw him, and I'm like, this kid's got everything the Raptors need. At the time, we did not have Jakob Pertl, and so I was focusing on centers because we hadn't had one in 4 years. And outside of shooting, which came later with Grady Dick, who we happily drafted, I was like, get me a center who's athletic, who can shoot threes, and can help us be better defensively. And this kid really stood out to me at that point, but he wasn't having a really good time at Oregon, and Oregon wasn't having a good season. And I'm like, he's probably going to need another year and needs to transfer out, which he thankfully did to Indiana and Mike Woodson. And now everyone else is sort of seeing what kind of talent he can really bring because the stats are there. The combine did him a lot of good. A lot of people got to see what kind of athlete he is. And despite what we'll get into, which is motor issues, which is always a concern with players, he shows a lot of talent that, if engaged, can really be impactful in the NBA. I don't think there's a whole lot he can't do, but we're going to get into it, and I think that he's the perfect player for the Raptors draft. They lost, unfortunately, their center of the future in Koloko to blood clots, and we definitely need one to support and or eventually take over from Jakob Pertl. So I think that if he's available at 19, he's a great draft pick for us. He's mocked between 12 and 19, and so we'll see if we get him. But that's where I'm at. There's a lot to talk about, and I had my eye on him, yes, since last November, and I'm happy you remember that story, Coach.
I do, because you were the one who introduced me to Kel'el Ware. I was calling him Kel'el Ware at the time,
Yes,
not
so was
knowing
I.
how it was pronounced Khalil. So, but
Yes.
I'm glad to see where he's at right now. That's for sure. It's a big jump from last year.
Yeah, he's up 10 points a game. He averages 10 rebounds, and he's a 42% shooter from three, only 17 of 40, but he's a threat from there, has great form. Um, and there's a lot in his game, like he's an alley-oop machine. Like he's a great in the pick and roll. Like if you can get the right point guard, he's gonna dunk all day on people with his height and size at 7'1", 230 pounds, and could even get bigger. Very athletic player. So if he can just figure out to stay in the game mentally, which is always tough, especially in the NBA, then he can really be something. But I think that's why he's so much lower in the mocks, because there are a lot of people that aren't sure about it.
So yeah, I mean the way that I look at it, and I think you may have mentioned it, but his coach actually said that he said had a lot of glowing things to say about him. But one of the things about Khalil Ware is that he obviously uh, is really, really good when he stays engaged or is focused. But or I'm not sure. Did we mention his height and his wingspan?
Well, I did say 7'1", 230, but the wingspan, I
Right,
believe, makes him 7'4" and a half.
right.
Do you have more of the details there from the combine?
I don't. I just want to make sure because I know at the combine he was really, really he scored really, really highly at a lot of these things. Um, that I guess people, you see the combine stats come out and suddenly it's whoa.
It was
Whoa,
it
who's
was
this
the high,
guy?
it was the highest combine score ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you collectively put it all together,
Yeah.
so the way that I look at him is he gives you a chance at a modern center that in terms of where the league is going towards. So the league is going towards more of a hybrid type of center that is more offensively versatile, who is able to maybe do some of the dirty work that you want a big man to do, but who's not as offensively limited as some of the other centers that you would see in this draft, like a Klingon or frankly like an Edie. Yes, Edie can shoot the three in practice, but can he do that in a real game, and how often will he be given that? As well as on the defensive end, ideally you want a rim protector. Now, I have heard some people talk. They'll see a guy like Sar. Sometimes they'll even see a guy like Klingon and say he's only a rim runner. I've heard it from Atlanta fans often. And I'm saying, Atlanta fans, I'm speaking to you, Atlanta fans, that these guys can do a little bit more if you give them the opportunity. So, to your point, one of the first things that you notice is he has the equivalent of Kyle Filipowski-esque shot. I need to look at Kyle. I don't have Kyle's numbers in front of me, but I think he might have even shot better than Kyle Filipowski if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 58% from the field, 42% from three. I believe those are both better than Kyle.
Yeah, so and he also has had, although it wasn't his role per se, at the same time he was able to, yeah, so 34%, 35% from deep. He was able to show a little bit of passing upside. So focusing in on the offensive side, I definitely have some thoughts on the defensive side as well. I mean, he could project to be a three-level scorer, which is kind of what you need, but he isn't necessarily ball dominant, which is what I like. Beyond your
No.
thoughts.
You guys you kind of set me up nicely because that's where I'm looking at right now. Because the Raptors are kind of like almost like Raptors are almost a decade behind what's going on right now. And what I mean by that is they've been kind of still living due to the Vision 6-9 stuff for the most part. They've been kind of playing catch up on where the league is, as you said before. If you go and look at these playoffs, even last year, you need, and I use the currency in my mind is mobility. If you're dealing with big men, your big men must be mobile. If they can't move, in this case on offense, you said before, be it a rim runner or be able to actually go out there and actually say attack the hoop, in this case on a closeout, or be quick off their feet in this case here for offensive rebounding, or defensively be able to switch or blitz on pick and rolls or hold in front of their man when they get caught in a switch, you're dead in the water when we get to this time of the season. Hey, I'm not going to say it because I'm a Mavericks guy, but the introduction of Lively alone took that to one level for Dallas. And then when they added Gafford, it went to another level in this case here. You see it a little bit, obviously, with Minnesota to some extent, obviously with Gobert and stuff like that, and to Nas Reed. You see go there with Boston. Porzingis has shown that he can hold his own when you switch in this case here. He's not going to be out there being like a wallflower. You can go on and on and on. You see the teams that had the bigs that are able to be mobile in this case, even the Pacers, who are not known to be defensive wizards, but their front court men in this case were able to stick enough in front of their players that they didn't compromise their defense. And I think that's where we have to be at this point. Right now, we have one center right now that is, I try to beat up, sorry, Purdue fans, but I'm trying to beat up, I'm just saying the fact, is right now being compromised on defense on multiple ways. And we can't have that. Never mind the fact that we already have enough issues with the other players around us when it comes to keeping their man in front of them. So to me, he is the start of moving towards that. As Mel said, the colloquial vision in this case here was unfortunate what's happened. I hope they see him back in the league soon, but that would have been the ideal person. I thought this year with To be honest with you, when the year started, I thought at some point during the year he'd be the starting center for the Raptors till everything went left. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at for him, and that's what I like about him. And the other thing too is, and both you discuss it with the measurements. Most times I don't really concern myself with the measurements too much, but there's certain scenarios where the measurements do matter. If you're dealing with a wing player, and if someone says, "Oh, he's 6'8", he's really actually a two guard," that's when measurements really matter. So no disrespect. For example, Walker in Indiana, that was one I was like, hold on. Same thing here. A lot of people say, oh, 7-footers, and just throw it out there. Everybody is 7-footer. A lot of people talk about people 7-footers, and then we actually see them play against real 7-footers. Like, okay, so this kid is actually a legit 7-footer, right? I hear people say like, oh, the Timberwolves have 3 7-footers. Nas Reed ain't 7 feet, folks. Okay, real good player. He ain't 7 feet. All right. You start seeing beside Jokic, you find out, nah, he ain't 7 feet. So the fact he's a legit 7-footer, that means something to me. The wingspan is, of course, great. That should at least get him into Masai's good books. So he should have he has a shot to get picked. I'll get into some of the. We can get the skills stuff later. We're going to discuss that later. I'll leave that for you guys to kind of move ahead with. But yeah, he's an intriguing pick. Let's put it that way. I would love to see.
Yeah. One of the things we didn't really talk about is the fact that he actually has really good touch, really good hands for catching, and a really good, as Samson Folk likes to put it, a catch radius, right? So when he puts his hands up, and in terms of having a target for someone to pass to on rolls, he's it. Plus, he finished at a 70% rate. Not all big men do that. That's definitely above average. And then also when a guard does it, he's not a guard, but when a guard does it, it definitely is noticeable. So the fact that he did it, and he's not like, he's 7 feet, but he's not like 7'5" or 7'8" or whatever the other two guys that are being talked about more in the draft are. The fact that he is able to finish at that high of a rate is pretty impressive, and he also has a plus, field goal percentage, call it, really high. I think it was 62% true shooting, which factors in all forms of shooting, while doing it not just by the hoop, but also away. So he's not afraid. I wouldn't say on the offensive end, he shies away from contact necessarily. I think some of the focus and effort and motor things come on the defensive end, and we'll get to that in a second. And some of those have even dated back to high school. That's kind of where it is. But I will say, as I go into the defense side, now that we're talking about defense, that he did show, the ability to be a rim protector and had interior shot blocking, which is exactly what you need. He's good at recovery, and he doesn't just let guys. I mean, if I would compare him to Edey, because Edey comes up in conversation a lot. Edey is good at being a rim deterrent, but the second he has someone blast pop by him, he's like, okay, next play, right? And
or he's just not capable of catching that guy once he beats.
Well, that too. Right?
Like, you can't get that track down block, right?
But some guys will let their length do it, and Edey, like I've just seen sometimes where Edey just gives up. He's like, okay, I'm done. I'm not wasting the energy.
Well, that's one thing I really noticed with him is his speed. He's got great foot speed. We're talking like sub 11 second lane foot speed where he can recover after being blown by. If his motor's right, and I'm going to say that a lot, if he's angry and focused, he'll recover to get a block. If he doesn't already get the block in front of you, he's also a very good help defender. He likes to throw the ball into the stands. He doesn't like getting beat, so that's a good sign for him. And with a 36-inch vertical, you're going to get a lot of blocks and a lot of dunks. So that's a good sign defensively as well. It looks like he can stay in front of guys for the most part, but if you do get by him, he's got the length to block it on the way back if he's trying to guard someone out in the perimeter as well.
Yeah, so before Coach goes, I'll just say a good comparison point for the audience is Scotty Barnes will sometimes let guys blow past him, but Scotty Barnes tends to rely on his athleticism to get those, emphatic swat and blocks. He can do that, but at times when he's focused and he's locked in, he's not letting guys blow past him, because I don't think he plays out on the perimeter as a switch defender like that. And he also, in terms of his stance, he doesn't sit on his heels. Rather, he's closer to the balls of his feet, which is a much better position to be able to be agile. There are some concerns as well with screen setting, but I think that's more getting a little bit letting the body fill it just a little bit more, and getting used to that. But yeah, I'll go in. I'll call on Coach, and then I'll go straight to you, Mouth of the North after. Any
The
thoughts
best
on
thing
his defense?
the best thing Kel'el Ware could have done was go to another school, but also return to the NCAA because he probably would have been drafted last year. Might have been the second round or late first, just based on talent alone. But I always think it's good when a player says, you know what, I want to go back to school. I want to try to make amends for what was going on last year because he was called lazy and all this stuff by other coaches and other trainers, things of that nature. And he went back and he tried to rectify that. And I think he did. Mike Woodson said, I can only judge what I see, and he had a good year. Kel'el Ware didn't have the best team around him. Let's just put it that way, as well as that comes a part of sometimes when a big time prospect goes to a college and they don't have much around them. It's got to be tough to have a good record. But in terms of like the lane agility thing that he did at the combine, that was better than Eves Mizzy. There's no motor issues with Eves at all. No one has ever said that. I think he did the shuttle run better than Eves as well, under 3 seconds. So, like Mouth had said, when this guy is engaged, talent wise, he's probably a top 2 or 3 center and coming out of this draft. If you're just thinking on talent, you want to say two, I would perfectly be fine with that, especially how his game might transition better to the NBA versus some of the other bigs. Because this draft, there's limited bigs. There's Klingon, there's Sar, there's Ware, Bilkowski, and Misi. That's probably your centers that you're really looking at. And I know there's Deron Holmes as well, but I kind of view him more as a four, quite frankly. So, look, I think Ware's talented. I think there's pick and roll upside, big time lob threat, but he's also a threat to step out and shoot the three, kind of like what Kenyon said about this Miles Turner comparison as well. He's kind of like a hybrid center. We were talking offline. Mouth said about a little bit of Jared Allen. Kenyon said a little bit of Miles Turner. I think there's a little bit of the two in there with him. And if the Raptors were to draft him next year, I'm perfectly fine with him eventually becoming the starting center. But I think it's good for him to come in off the bench and just to see here's what to expect if you're going to be the NBA starting five for this team moving forward, but also just learning how to set good screens. One thing Pirtle actually does well, he does set some mean screens, and I think that's something Ware could learn from him, and just battling him in practice every time. That's going to help his development as well.
Yeah, he plays a lot like a wing, and I don't know if that's necessarily a problem because a lot of centers play like wings, and he has the speed and agility to do that. So he's not your prototypical, I guess, Jakob Poeltl type center. But if I'm looking at the Raptors right now, they've got IQ, they got RJ, Grady, and Scotty. What better player to put with that tandem than a guy who's going to get alley-oops all day and open up your offense from a 3-point standpoint? If you want someone to help your offense and you want to create spacing, this is the guy you draft. I don't think Kling's going to do that. I don't think Edie's going to do that. Filipowski, yes, could because he can shoot from the outside, but I'm looking at an athlete who can do both and also defend. And no matter who, like he's going to need the right coach. I will say that. I think Mike Woodson really helped him a lot this year and pushed him. And, I don't want to get into Darko, but I'm not sure how that would work. But I think that he's going to need the right coach. But in that offense, I think that Ware's the right guy in this draft if you're looking to open up your offense and certainly help defensively. He has that ability, and I think it's limited with Jakob. To be fair to Jakob, I just think it's going to be limited with him because of his foot speed and the way the NBA's played today. And so even as a backup that can eventually become a starter, I think this is the guy to draft.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for someone to fit around Scotty Barnes, or even to be honest, I'll give Darko credit. Darko likes to put his, the ball in the hands of those in the front court. Now, what's interesting about that is Ware, as I said before, has demonstrated passing upside. So he'll have that opportunity. I mean, it's if you go back last year, it's like, would you rather have the ball in Ware's hands making decisions, as crazy as it sounds, or Precious? I
I'd
think
rather
most
have it in
people,
Ware's hands.
having seen the game tape, if not, go back on Basketball Rewind. I definitely shared some of it where, Precious made a lot of people confused, including himself sometimes. I don't think that that's going to be necessarily the issue. However, as you said, the challenge is always going to be motor. And I think as tough as it is this draft, because you have two picks, it might be worth it to take the swing on this because again, I don't see in next year's draft there's less centers and there's less front court players that could play center. Now, the other thing that I'll say before I swing it over to Beyond is a really interesting fact that JD shared with me, which is that he used to play, and maybe this is the reason why, is he used to play a different type of role and style before in high school. He used to play like Kevin Durant. And so maybe this is kind of where it kind of stems from is he is really a forward that has now become something else because of his height. And I'm wondering what you guys, I'm going to start with Beyond. I'm wondering what you guys kind of think of that. And maybe that's why it's like, you have in your mind, like I'll use Scotty Barnes as an example. I'm a point guard, or I'm Kevin Durant. This is what I am. And there's like, it takes either time to shift or time to adjust or time to become that at the next level. I will say though, I do think he could fit in a starting lineup if you needed him to have Kelly Olynyk help be an elder statesman on the bench. I think he could fit next to Pirtle without there being problems. Beyond.
Okay, I'll get your question in a second because I want to go back to what you and what Mouth had mentioned because I think it's the cloud that's hanging over all this that we be it because we don't want to discuss it or we kind of are just tiptoeing around it or we know that's going to have to be the case. But I'm just as I hear you guys speaking, I'm thinking to myself like, okay, this young man's had questions about motor. The type of coach that got the best out of him here is Mike Woodson, who's not known to be. If I had to go into leisure for like players coach, the hard ass. He's more slides towards the hard ass part of the spectrum. He ain't Tibbs, but he's more down the road. So now I'm looking here now, our coach. And I'm saying, well, which part of the ledger would he likely be on? Well, he's way out here on the other side here, man. It's Club Med out here. And I'm thinking to
That's
myself,
the problem.
I'm thinking to
That's a
myself,
big
like,
problem.
okay, so we see what the best came out of him. And now we're putting him into a situation where a couple things are going to come into play. One, the style and the culture. I would just put it that way. The be all PC. The culture of this team does not maybe work well for a guy with his type of mindset.
Yes.
One, two. Are we getting the best out of the player that we're talking about? Because we all talk about how he has a prowess for finishing, be it at the rim, be it for dives, be it for three-pointers, be it for a jump shot. Well, the problem with this offense is the center is a facilitator. The center's not the guy finishing anything. And we don't run a lot of pick and roll.
Yep.
And we don't have pick and roll type of guards. So don't get me wrong, folks. I would love to see Ware. But I'm just thinking from a standpoint of just if I'm playing the role of Ware's agent, I'm saying like, you know what? I don't know. Or even Ware's family, knowing what type of person you have, that ain't the spot for you, homie. That ain't the spot for you. So now go to your point. That type of guys existed for the beginning of time in the NBA, right? I'll get coach get a chuckle. I'm gonna bring up Dave. He's gonna start chuckling the more I say so because he's gonna think of some type of sequence. All right, my dad loved this man in college. All right, my man coming out of Pittsburgh, smooth jump shot, big as an ox, 6'11", 260 or so probably. Charles Smith. Charles Smith would give you 18, 20 points in a heartbeat like that. Charles Smith in this case was not one of maybe the most, let's put it this way, physical players in this case that you would see for a man that size. I was just saying in this case here, I believe the book that just came out a couple of years ago with the Knicks, 90s Knicks, and there's a little sequence that came out about Pat Riley's thoughts about Charles Smith and what he could give him for a playoff game. That's that I said before. Charles Smith's a great professional, smart businessman. You knew he's going to be successful in business because he's always a very intelligent, really well know what he's doing type of guy. But he ain't one to roll up the sleeves type of guy. He knew what his game was. You give me an 18-foot pick and pop, I'm your man. I ain't going down there. Leave that for Charles Oakley and Mason. I ain't going down there. Right now. So to your point, there have been guys like that. And the question is, if you have the right type of coaching and the right type of culture to get the kind of the beast out of them, is the type of culture we have going to be able to facilitate what you want in this Kenyon? That's the question comes down to it where. Because do they match? Or somehow can they match? I don't know. You all can tell me in the comments.
I said this exact thing to Kenyon before we did the show, and you're 100% correct. Go ahead, Kenyon.
Well, what I would say is this. The best type of center, if you have an opportunity to get it, is not a system player. It's someone who can potentially have the opportunity to transcend a system. Because as as people in my comments recently said, if the system isn't working around Pirtle, why don't we change the system? Well, that's a problem. You're building around Pirtle. That doesn't make no sense. Because it just are you built? I thought we were building around Scotty, not Pirtle. Whose team is this?
Yeah.
Well, I think Pirtle would be shocked that you're building around. Say what?
Exactly. Right.
So at this point, that's why I say Ware makes sense because as a big man, if I'm ranking the big mans that might be in our area, it's like you either get someone like Macy where they're super rare or raw, sorry. They do provide a set skill, but they're very raw, or you get someone who's a little bit more diverse. And between those two, it's probably Ware or Filipowski. And I've already voiced my concerns, and I've already, done a video on Filipowski that you guys can all feel free to check out. So I just think, from my standpoint, I'd rather someone who's not a system player, just in case you say you're still under Darko, but you switch up the system. If you switch up the system, he can fit in both things. He's not actually the best screen setter. So I know you talk about him as a roller and lob threat, but he's not a good screen setter. So that might even work because we do a lot of DHOs, right? From that standpoint, if he can handle a DHO, then then he can do that. That's why I'm advocating for him even in the Darko thing. I will say one thing. I know I'm being a little long-winded. This is for the audience. Regardless of your thoughts on Darko or not, everyone needs to agree on one thing. Otherwise, we're gaslighting each other, or we're all in insanity world. Which is that he was brought in because the last coach was not a developmental coach and was not as, say it, soft or nice or player friendly to some of the guys on this roster. That's why he was brought in. He was not brought in to be the stick, but to be the carrot. So with that being said, talking about Ware, he responded better to the stick. And that's what we're trying to basically outline is, do you want to give a guy who since high school has needed the stick and let him without the stick? And it could work out, and it may not work out as well as you want.
Right.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, if we get to 7 straight losses, what's a guy how a guy him's going to respond?
Right. Because not everyone can stay disciplined after that, and you get down on yourself. You start moping on the court. You may not be disciplined on defense or whatever. And no, people, I'm not referring to anyone in particular. The whole team was bad. Pick your choice. But yeah, so it's I think it's a concern.
It's
a very valid
but
concern.
You guys had mentioned that your concerns. That was exactly where I was going to go my next part, because I feel like I've been really talking highly about Kel'el Ware, which I certainly like to, but there's also concerns, the motor issue certainly. But I think you guys brought up the good point about coming to this system. I can tell you, if the Miami Heat are picking at 15 and they want to take a chance on him, and they believe that Spoelstra can get the most out of him, they should better damn well maybe take him.
Oh yeah,
because
for sure.
Yeah,
right. And with Darko, I don't mean to get into Darko too much, but I think it was brought up on Will Lou's new show about how maybe he could be a little bit too buddy with the group, and maybe that's because he was an assistant coach for a while, and I don't want to go to the head coach. I don't want him to know or whatever, so I'll go to Darko, who's a nice guy. I think Darko's going to change his approach next year with many of the younger players and say, "Hey, I'm here for you, but we have a job to do. Our job is to win games and develop, and it might be some tough conversations, but that's part of being a pro. It's also part of being a coach in the NBA."
That's coming from Coach.
Well, well, okay. So I'm gonna just say I don't want to talk too much about Darko,
Please,
but
please don't.
like, basically, when a coach doesn't mention defense and only mentions development, never talks about wins, never talks about his record, and says he did an awesome job last year when we had one of the worst seasons of our franchise, I don't have much faith. And that's my concern with bringing in a guy like Ware, who's admittedly very laid back. He's not a guy that's the go-to guy on offense, or you're going to look at him to be a vocal leader. He's not that guy. And now we have a coach that's as laid back as some of the guys we already have on the team. We're going to bring Ware, who's very laid back with his demeanor and his approach, to add to this team already. It doesn't sound like a good combination, Beyond.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the person essentially you replaced last year in Indiana, right? Jackson Davis in this case here, you never had to worry about Jackson Davis. I watched playing his games last year. One thing for sure, and once again, big fan. My dad, big fan of him. He's like, that boy's gonna be a player in the NBA. He was right on that one. You don't have to worry about that with him. You just roll out the ball, and he can give you 10 boards. He might give you 10 points, and off you go. Like that is also, he could play in different systems, be it the laid back one or a much more rigid system. Be if it's, Kerr's kind of in the middle, I would say. I think Kerr's a little more to the laid back side, but with that, but he's not like hard, he's not all the way over, but like he can play in any system because you just roll the ball, he's gonna ball, right? Certain personalities like Ware, and I've seen this type of personality we all have, is where it's like, you need a little more coaxing with the right type of guy to get the best out of that dude.
Very low energy players. So
yeah.
The hope is that I think Woodson really helped him. And I'm very, very concerned about our coaching situation and how that will affect a player like Ware. I think the talent is there, and I think he's worth a shot. But man, our situation is tough right now. So it's a little harder to get excited about him because of the player, not the player's ability, but the man. And then dealing with the situation that we have in Toronto right now with the coaching staff. And
so you would take a swing on him though?
Oh, I would, because I think the talent is too good. But Darko's high energy to his low energy might not be the best mix.
This is the reason why I keep on saying I want guys to know how to play, which he does know how to play. But I also want dogs in this case here. I've mentioned that in previous conversations. Yes. So in this case, if like for example, if De Silva and him are both on the board, I'm taking De Silva.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've consistently had a ranking, and like Whereas stayed high, maintained high, but he's never been number one for me for that reason.
Right.
Yeah, right. Like, even the kid that you talked about just offline in this case is growing on me as well too, Carter. Right? If Carter is on the board, I might say, you know what? I know I'm gonna get here. I don't have to worry about nothing. I got coax anything out of that dude. Right? Because this team needs more guys like that. Even even if he was like the incident before, even if he was Tibbs. You still need some on-court personality like that. This team's too laissez-faire. There's too many guys that are just nice guys and have a cup of coffee, drink a beverage, chill out. There's too many dudes like that on this team.
Now, I'm not someone who tries to be, like a body language doctor or anything like that, right? But what I will say is that when you do listen to some of these guys' interviews, I think the thing to listen to is what are they interested in? How do they talk about the game? And I think that some guys, especially it tends to be the guys who have had an NBA dad, like Carter, they tend to give a much more complete answer that's a little bit deeper, right? A little bit more. Sorry? RJ is a good example.
We saw that with Grady last year. It was a great
I was going to bring up Grady as well with his mom and how he would talk about Reggie Miller and all this type of stuff, right? And you juxtapose that with other guys who don't really have much depth to them. And I think that's one of the things. I haven't listened to too much of Ware's interviews, but I'm just saying that's always an interesting thing to kind of pay attention to when you're looking at this. Not to go and try to psychoanalyze the guy. I think people get way too that oh the guy touched his head and he might be a liar because he touched his head 5 times.
But
No.
here's the other thing, though, Kenyon, to your point, that is, I guess, maybe to simplify it. How
Mm-hmm.
many guys that have like parents that are, I just found out about I didn't realize they were related. I didn't find out about Banchero's mother in this case played for the Sacramento Monarchs, right? How many of these guys in this case we're talking about that have had parents that have been professionals in this case are not dogs that you say like, boy, I'm not sure about attitude. I can't think of one from Gary Payton's son to go right on up. The only one I can think of, the only one.
That includes your man, by the way, Keontae George.
Yeah, exactly. The only one I can think of, ironically, is our favorite topic when we talk about the Canadian national team. He's the only one.
Shea?
Come on now.
Oh, Wiggins.
No,
Right,
Shea.
exactly.
Wiggins,
Oh, true,
Wiggins.
true. Oh, in terms of not being a dog.
He's
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
exception.
Yeah.
Everybody
And he and remember when he was, all the rage and was going to be one. What was the one thing that was always talked about with him? Motor. Every single time I heard about Wiggins, they were concerned about his motor, and it's stayed that way. So yes, that does concern me because motor you can't teach. You can't teach motor, man. You got to have it or you don't.
don't have it. Yeah. That's always a dangerous circumstance to get yourself into.
Now, I might be getting this wrong, but Andrew Wiggins, he went to Kansas, right?
Yep.
Yes.
And he, if I'm not mistaken, played with Embiid, as you said,
Yep.
right? Now I remember because he came in. I remember him stretching up. Everyone was Maple Jordan, and I remember the interesting thing about that is yes, he kind of faded a little bit down the stretch of that Kansas team.
But the funny thing is, very similar to the Colorado situation we're talking about now on a bigger scale. We started the season watching Wiggins, and I remember my dad watching Saturday games, watching that with him. We sit there watching. My dad said, "I don't know, but that big boy in the middle there, he can play. He can play."
I remember seeing Embiid, man. It was
the fifth game of the season or sixth game or something. They're like, "Damn, you're playing like Duke in Hawaii or something." It's like that big man can play.
Yeah. To be fair to Kel'el Ware, though, he's not going to have those expectations that Wiggins had. Not going to lead a franchise. And I'm just saying this part though about the motor because certainly yes, it is definitely a cause for concern. But he just turned 20 years old. Bigger guys take a little longer to develop. I think that this coaching staff and how they approach this with him is going to be key moving forward. Because if let's just say too, in the next year or two, if this team isn't progressing in some capacity, well, there'll be a new staff in. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's how it works in the NBA.
That's how, things go quickly. But Coach, I would actually say that it's even more of a problem because at least when there's the expectations, there's an extra level of motivation to kind of get the guy up. Right? And extra pressure on the organization to go get the guy up. You can, in certain situations, get forgotten in the mix. And we've seen it happen on other teams where guys, are kind of, you're middling and then you kind of stay middling. And, I'm not saying like it's Ayton kind of a thing where Ayton's like, well, my job is to get to the next contract and then I'm happy. And I made it. So, y'all are suckers.
With Ware, though, Ware, if he's there at 19, he's unless someone falls out of the top 13, 12 picks to 19, probably my pick. I like to walk and chew gum at the same time because people say, oh, you got to draft the best talent. Not disagreeing with that. I think if you could do best talent and fit, why don't you at 19? It's not 2, it's not 5, it's 19. And I don't see why you probably couldn't do that. But like Beyond had said, I'm also really high on De Silva. Like it's 1 and 1A with those guys. I'm happy if we get one of those guys.
Sure.
Perfectly honest. And if my guy Jarrett McCain falls, I'm even happier if it was him. I just don't see him falling. I just don't fall. And even the Carrington kid, I'm not trying to go into that. I'm just saying there's creation there with him, upside, and I like that. But I think Ware fits a talent and a need.
So I'm going to ask everyone but Mouth of the North because I already know his answer because it's his guy. So I'm going to ask the rest of you a question, and then I'll we'll get on out of here to the our next stuff. So I'll start with you, Coach, because you were the last person to talk. I'm going to ask you at 19 if Devin Carter. Maybe that's not fair.
Yeah.
We'll say Tristan Da Silva or Collier versus Ware. Are you taking either of those? And then if you were to rank those three, how would you do that?
De Silva is probably better than Ware right now. I think he's the best player available at that
Yeah, apparently it's
particular
Boucher.
spot. And sorry, I like his skill set too. You're not going to go wrong if you pick De Silva. I think what Ware has done to redeem himself of these motor issues and the talent that he does have and the fit that he does bring to this team. I think in a draft limited with bigs, and I might be more willing to take a big in this draft than I would be a big in next year's draft, because if especially top 2 or 3 for us next year, that might be more of a wing player. Just saying. So if it was me, I probably would go with Ware, but I'm not losing any sleep if it is Collier, and I'm definitely not losing
So
sleep if it's De Silva.
you're with Ware, and then beyond, I'll ask you basically the same. Yeah, I'll ask you the same question.
I mean, to me, it's like De Silva, Ware, Collier. I think that Collier to me is like a far third, like in my mind, because we've discussed the Collier thing already. We'll get to that one.
He's talented, so there's not that.
But
Yeah.
He's also an issue when it comes to fit, when it comes to this culture.
There you go.
Differently, almost in some ways, perhaps the opposite.
Yes, he's a fit in or fit out guy.
Right, exactly.
On his own.
Coach makes a good point. Why Ware stock might be a much more appealing option where I can make the argument to take him first is I agree with Coach on this. I would take a big more likely in this draft than next year's draft.
Yep.
Right.
Because the drop off between the wings and guards versus the bigs next year, like, yo, boy, you can't be passing up no wing or guard next year.
Which brings us full circle to the beginning of this conversation, which is funny because it's like, again, this year's draft, it's like there are a couple bigs. I'm not saying that they're the best bigs in the world. You're not getting Wemby, but there are a few of them that are going to present the chance for a team to get a new modern NBA guy. And the nice thing about Ware is that Beyond doesn't need to fight his old bias against Slenderman because he's not completely slender.
Exactly. I got a few on my team, man. He's doing real work, man.
He's truly the perfect, hybrid of old and new remix.
Yeah, he's got a good size on him, but he's not like completely he's like an oaf like an ox where you can't move. No, I mean, I'll say this though. I mean, I'm gonna drop the mic here. Don't be surprised, folks, if he is still on the board and Filipowski's on the board. Don't be surprised the Raptors take the man for Duke. Do not be surprised.
Then I will be mad. Then I will be mad. If that happens, I will be angry.
The other thing is that any Duke player, you know that they like to get down in the mud with guys and maybe do a little bows and stuff, even to the crowd. So Filipowski, come on down.
Yeah.
You were gonna say.
I wanted to mention, Kenyon, that De Silva and Carter are nice players. I would prefer not to draft Carter because he's a very small guard. I do like his game, but we already have IQ, and I know we need a backup, but I would prefer to go big in this draft. De Silva's a nice player, but I prefer the wings in next year's draft, so that point was well taken. I wanted to ask Beyond because I did see this comparison a lot. I'm not sure if it's a fair one or not, but a lot of people are saying that him and Derek Lively were comparable when they were coming out. What do you think of that comparison between Ware and Lively?
I think that there is a lot of comps in this case. That's why I keep bringing up the point that if we were more of a pick and roll offense, I think you would get the full experience of Ware in that sense. Because I think he is a decent passer, can make decisions when he gets those pick and rolls, those dives. But we don't run that offense, so you would never get to see that element of his game. But I think there is legitimate. I think he's probably a better offensive player than Lively. I think Lively might be a bit more of a defensive disruptor than him. But I don't think that there's that much difference between the two. And as Coach said, he might have been drafted in the same place last year, and that was a better draft, right? Yeah. So with a worse season, right? So I think with him, It's always that part. Lively's got a motor. You don't have to worry about Lively. Right, that's really the difference between the two, and motor is almost like a curse word for GMs and for scouts. That sends shivers up their spine, right? Because I remember Kobe had an interview one time talking about this. I'm pretty sure it was Kobe describing this too, and talk about Vince and him and how their careers have gone and stuff like that. And one of the things he wasn't saying it out loud, but what I pulled away from it. So I'm not saying ascribes to Kobe. I'm going to say it for me. One of the major differences pretty much between Vince and Kobe really is the motor. You can make an
100%.
argument Vince has got much more of a better offensive arsenal than Kobe in some ways.
Vince, like so many other Raptors who were put in that specific situation with the wrong infrastructure, had admitted, like some others, like Bargnani, for example, that he could have done better.
Yeah,
Yep.
But like the difference between Bargnani and him is Bargnani never had the capability of doing that.
True,
Correct.
But I'm saying in terms of him versus Kobe, because I never heard Kobe say, "Yeah, I didn't try."
Right.
No,
right.
but he's right about Carter's motor, though. Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
Carter never wanted to be great.
Yeah,
He just wanted to be good. That's
my exact point is that like Kobe never said, I wish I would have worked harder.
Right.
You
never had to worry.
Right.
He said it about Shaq a lot. Shaq a lot.
Oh, Shaq had his moments, right? Like once again, Shaq. People would never think of more than Shaq, but let's face it, there are certain coaches that got the best out of Shaq because they're hard asses. All right, Pat Riley. To some extent, Phil could be that way. People don't think of Phil that way. People think he's out there just smoking wherever he's smoking out in North Dakota. But Phil can get on your backside in this case. Through his mind games with you. But when you had other guys like Del Harris, not so much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I'll say one final thing, and we'll get out of here, which is about Devin Carter, which is fine. I'm just saying he is 6'4" with shoes, and he has a 6'8" wingspan.
Okay.
So
I saw 6'2", and I'm like,
Yeah, so he plays bigger than he is. He's kind of like Cason Wallace in that sense, And I'll also say the more I looked at the combine, he's like the guard version of where he broke a lot of the stuff. Where all of a sudden you're like, this dude is the highest vertical leap. And I'm like, you go down the line, I'm like, okay, and he's not like, Rob Dillingham size. I'm down for that, but yeah.
So I would put Carter ahead of Collier for sure too. By the way.
Yeah.
But with that, I don't think Carter will be there though.
No, I don't. I that's why I took him off. It wasn't fair. But with that being said, it's been Basketball Rewind. We've had a good episode. Like, comment, subscribe if you like this stuff. We're going to be talking about more stuff, not just Raptors stuff. We're also going to be talking about, the WNBA. We're going to be talking about, obviously the upcoming special, event that comes only every so often, 4 years. Oh, that's right, the Olympics. Apparently the event that needs Caitlin Clark's ratings as a boost. But we'll be talking about all that on Basketball Rewind. And if you felt offended by that, well, I don't know what to tell you. Go watch Stephen A. Take care and peace.